Hi, it's Chris Hughes. I'm here with Cancer Stories, and I hope you're going to watch my video and see my journey through. And for me, it's been a lucky experience. Lucky that it was diagnosed early. Luckily that I had the support of my wife, my family and my friends, and most importantly, the team at the hospital. So I hope you'll get something from this. Hi, my name's Chris Hughes. I'm 52 from Quorn in Leicestershire, originally born Newcastle upon Tyne. I spent my childhood in Nottinghamshire, a little village called Southall, moving to London when I was 16. I got married in my mid-20s and now have a daughter aged 21. We've lived pretty much right across England, and I was diagnosed with cancer in 2009.
Chris, thanks for coming in to join us on the Cancer Stories programme. We appreciate you spending this time with us. I understand you were diagnosed with a head and neck cancer, which in the medical jargon sometimes called squamous cell carcinoma.
Yeah, that was it.
How did it come about in your case?
It was a routine visit to the dentist and the usual sort of checkup. And there were two bits that fell out of that. One, he wanted to do a filling. And secondly, he said he'd noticed some cells that he'd like someone to have a look at and made a referral. At the time, I was more worried about the filling than the referral. That came through quite quickly. I saw a consultant at Loughborough Hospital who examined it, and I think in his view, there was probably nothing that sinister about it, but I was a stupid idiot for still smoking. But nevertheless, they'd take the wisdom tooth out and do a biopsy. Luckily, I left the hospital that day and made the decision to stop smoking. So in the end, I had the tooth out. At the time the tooth was taken out, I could tell there was something that just wasn't quite right. It didn't come out like any other tooth. So they removed the tooth, and I went back a number of weeks later and was told that it actually was a tumour.
You mentioned there about smoking. In your opinion, was smoking a contributory factor, or was it just something you wanted to cut out for health reasons?
I think it was a contributory factor. I'd had problems in that area with abscesses, but smoking could not have helped that problem. So yes, I see smoking as probably been the main cause of it.
Just out of interest, did you get help to give up smoking, or did you do it on willpower alone?
I used, I'll never forget, I stopped at Birstall and smoked my last cigarette and went into Boots and bought patches, bought gum, and it worked.
It worked for you?
Yeah.
And you were able just to stop at that point?
Yeah, I think I had the willpower to do it, and that's the bit you need.
And did the fact that you had a suspicious, condition at that time, that worry, was that the incentive to stop?
The incentive was I thought I'd got away with it. And I didn't think I'd be so lucky again, next time. And I thought, this is the one opportunity, my head's in the right place to do it. So I took it, and I've never smoked a cigarette since.
What was the next step after that?
After that, I went and I had the tooth removed. And clearly it was, like I say, it was more than just a normal extraction. A lot of stitches, a lot of bleeding, and initially the plan had been that I'd go back to Loughborough just to get stitches out and follow up, but straight away they said actually I need to come back to the Max clinic. So
that's the maxillofacial department,
clinic, yeah, in Leicester LRI. The appointment duly came through, and I went back and saw one of I think it was a registrar there, who sort of said, they'd had the results back and unfortunately there was a tumour there. The positive bit of that is it was caught really early, was the view. And at that point, I sort of started on a roller coaster of activities. So you've got the trauma, but in some ways there was a bit of relief there, because up until that point I'd been suspecting and was worried, had I got cancer? At least then I knew. And it sounds crazy to say, but there was almost a sense of relief that at least I knew and I had something I could deal with.
That's interesting. So that worry about what's going on, is it cancer, was partly alleviated by them giving you the full facts.
Yeah. The fear of cancer is greater than the fear of cancer, I think.
Interesting. What did they actually tell you about the stage, the nature of the tumour, and or the outlook at that stage?
So the feedback was that they thought it had been caught early. I think what was said was that they could treat it in terms of surgery, but it was a very blunt instrument that they were going to use, and didn't go into a lot of depth about the surgery initially on that first visit. So I knew there would be an operation and they would remove it. The extent of the surgery came later, but I have to say it was all really positive, and straight away I saw the Macmillan nurse, I saw the dietitian, I saw the speech therapist. They took me up onto the ward where I'd be looked after, and then said, go away and have your 2-week holiday. So we did, and I thought we'd go away on holiday and have an absolute nightmare, but actually we had one of the best holidays we've ever had. So
you were able to put things out of your mind, or you were relieved that they'd already made some progress?
Yeah, because the treatment was in progress and I knew what was going to happen, was able to not forget it, but you could actually just place it there at the back of your mind in that right spot, so there were brief seconds where you didn't think about it, but enough that you could enjoy a holiday.
I'm interested to know what kind of interruption you had in your normal life when that cancer came along. You were working at the time?
Yeah, I work for the Ministry of Justice. I'm responsible for recruitment across its agencies, so courts, prisons, and the central office. And the week I was actually diagnosed, the colleague I worked with, Dave, was actually diagnosed with leukemia on the Thursday.
Oh, right.
So we were able to go through the whole cancer journey together. So initially we could only sort of text each other because I couldn't talk, and he was down in Maidstone and I was up in Leicester. But when I was well enough to travel again, I could go down and see him. So
okay, so you were being treated in different centres, but you were going through your cancer journey together.
Together, yeah.
And you shared the same workplace in London, is it?
That's it, yeah. We sat next to each other in London.
So did that help in the sense that you had a friend, I guess, who you could always rely on and was also struggling, I guess, at times? Yeah,
and I mean the beauty of it is you could actually share your most innermost thoughts with that person.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing that you learn afterwards is that everyone goes through those same thought processes.
Yeah. How much do you think that helped you compared to not having that person?
It's hard to gauge. I had if you can describe it as a positive journey.
Yeah.
And without Dave, I think it would have been totally different. Just having someone you could, I say initially text because I couldn't talk, just share your inner thoughts with was amazing.
Now we don't always have, or we rarely have the system where we partner people up with others going through the same journey. But there is a proposal to have a kind of cancer buddy or mentor. That's somebody who's recently been through it, who you are put in touch with early on, and then you can use as a source of advice and support. Yeah. Can you see that working in a similar way?
Yeah, I mean that would be invaluable because there's things you can't talk to people around you, your wife, partner, family. The things you just want to keep to yourself, but actually having somebody who is going through exactly the same thing, you can discuss it and you don't have to be overly sensitive about it. You can actually just tell it as it is, and they're not going to take offence, you're not going to take offence at the things they say.
Yeah, absolutely. So how much interruption did the cancer cause work?
So I was diagnosed, I say, on the Monday, and for the next 5 days I had quite a few appointments, but I also had a 2-week holiday booked, and they were really good and said, no, just go away, enjoy the holiday, which I didn't think we'd be able to, but we did, and we had a brilliant holiday, and so good that we've actually gone back to the same place time and time again. I came back, I think I was back at work about a week, and then went into hospital. I was in hospital about 3.5 weeks, and then discharged, and I was back at work part-time within 3 months. So work were really supportive in that process beforehand, keeping in touch whilst I was off sick, but then was really good about a phased return to work process that just actually got my brain back working, whilst physically I sort of grew in strength.
So your employer was quite sympathetic to your needs in a way?
Very sympathetic and very understanding, and you know, got it right. I think that was the key bit.
Yeah. I'm guessing that the main issue in terms of time off work was the surgery?
Yes.
So tell us about the surgery you had and what it involved.
So the surgery was, by the time I went into for the surgery, I understood what it was involved in. It was quite scary. So there was the enabling pieces, so a peg, a tracheotomy, a flap taken from my arm, and so basically they unzipped my face, so it was cut all the way through there and laid back so they could remove the tumour safely. They put it back with the flap, but unfortunately, I think a matter of hours after the operation, there was a problem with the flap, so they took me back into surgery, and hopefully they thought they'd repaired it. Subsequent to that, or after that, the flap failed. So a week later, I went in and they removed the flap and took the master, I can't remember the exact
mastoid.
Muscle, and sort of twisted that to fill the space, and that seemed to work. So that obviously kept me in hospital a bit longer, and I was discharged. I did have a problem with weight. I just kept losing weight, but the dietitian was coming every week and 40 sips and supplements, and we managed to stabilise it. I then just got back to work and was starting to eat again, and then got osteomyelitis in my jaw. So that required then going back in for surgery to take out some of the metalwork that had been put there, and to tidy up the bone. So that stopped the osteomyelitis, but unfortunately they haven't been able to get the jaw to knit together. So I'm left with a gap in my jaw that's I guess filled with muscle or something else, but I can still function.
How many procedures did you have to have in total?
So 1, 2, 3, 4 in total.
4.
Yeah.
And you had 2 major complications: the failure of the flap, and then the osteomyelitis. Yeah. Thinking about all that you went through now, there are obviously people starting their journey afresh who'd be scared. Oh God, what's going to happen to me? Do you think with the support that you had, you could see yourself, if you had to face that again, getting through it? Does it seem really amazing that you got through it, or does it seem like, with the right support you could face it again? Well,
I could face it again because before the surgery they warn you about the things that could go wrong, but you pick and choose what you remember. But I do remember that they said, there is likely to be problems along the way, and I think that the flap failing, it's just one of those things. What I liked was, I remember going into theatre for the second operation and them having a whole range of options as to how they were going to fix it. And clearly they didn't know until they got back in there what they could do. And that's a bit of my style and way of looking at things. So don't close your options down too soon. So I was quite pleased when I came round and found out that they'd found this way of using the muscle. So, and then the osteomyelitis, well, they'd had, so that was 3 times it had been opened up. it was always going to be risky and ripe for infection because it was just taking so long to heal. But again, they dealt with it. I mean, that's, you know, there was a plan put in place, and that was it, you know.
After you'd had all those procedures and then you were back home and finally on the mend, how long would you say it took to start to, you know, go out, to start to regain doing things that you wanted to do? I know you said about the interruption from work, roughly 3 months.
Yeah.
But then talking about your general lifestyle and what you were able to do when. Can you remember how that recovery process went?
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that's difficult when you come home and if you can't eat. My wife, who was, you know, just brilliant through the whole process, but actually that thing about eating together as a family, and you take that away and you don't realise how significant it is. So I think eating for my wife and daughter became a problem. I think, you know, clearly they felt uncomfortable. What I did was I actually then took charge of the cooking. So I thought, if I can't eat it, at least I can cook it. So it engaged me in that process and really enjoyed that.
Wow, that's quite surprising. Because a lot of people, if they're not eating, they would want to kind of avoid the idea of food. Don't get involved with it. But you took the opposite approach.
Yeah, because you can't avoid it. So actually just get in there, and it was something actually I could do as well whilst I was at home.
Yeah.
The other thing, I was a keen swimmer. And so the dietitian helped me out with some special like giant plasters that went over the peg, that meant I could get back swimming sort of 1 day a week. Well, every other day I swam, and then I went to the golf range. I played golf when I was a lot younger, so I bought a couple of clubs and went sort of just swinging to get the exercise back in the arm. So
it sounds to me like you took up these activities almost like to do your own rehabilitation.
Yes, yeah, and I got some physiotherapy as well, which was really good in just terms of telling you what to do. I think that's the key bit, because you know your arm's stiff, you know your neck's stiff.
Yeah.
What can you do, and practical things that you can do, because people tend not to do the exercises that they're told.
Well, I was actually curious about that, because there's certain types of advice and like physio where you do prescribed exercises.
Yeah.
But then there's another form which is much more participation in things. And sometimes participation in an event or a sport, you get, you know, kind of sucked up in it, and before you know it, you're doing more than you realised. Yeah.
So going swimming was good because there's the social aspect again of it, and going to the driving range, you saw the same people there, and you got chatting, and it just gave you something to do during the day whilst you were off.
Do you remember any key milestones of, like, the day I was able to do this that was quite memorable for you?
So the first day I could go back swimming was good, getting back in the water. And the other one I remember is going to the theatre, because we'd always gone to the theatre. And I didn't think anything of it until we actually got to the theatre and we were sort of sat there, and I remember feeling a bit shaky. But you get over it, and manage to enjoy the performance.
So I'm guessing it was quite nerve-wracking to go initially.
Yes, you sort of build your own sort of, I don't know what, cocoon around yourself. So to go for a walk round, where I live, to go to the swimming pool, to go to the driving range, you felt quite safe. Walking out in a busy street, and you think people are going to bash into you and knock you. It just takes you a while just to build your confidence. And I was always convinced that my face was still out here, and I mean it still feels a bit like that now. But actually, to other people, they don't notice.
No.
You're convinced everyone is going to notice that you've got a face out here and scars. Well, actually, people are just getting on with their lives and don't notice you.
That's very interesting. Did you ever receive any comments or feedback while you were out?
I received more looks and stares at the swimming pool with this great big plaster. Okay. It's a translucent plaster over a peg.
Yes.
And I think the people just couldn't understand what it was, and I'd never seen anyone.
So just for the viewer then, the peg feed is basically an indwelling tube to the stomach.
Yeah.
to enable a more direct feed if you're not able to swallow
Yeah.
in the normal way, and it's usually a temporary measure.
Yeah.
Was it in your case? Was the peg
Yeah.
reversed?
So I couldn't eat anything for about 3 months, and then started eating gradually, but still needed the peg just to take as a supplement.
Yeah.
But so I had the operation in August. By Christmas, I was back eating a full Christmas dinner, and the peg at that stage just becomes a bit of an inconvenience that you have to clean and cover it when you go swimming. But I got it out after just less than 12 months.
Was it straightforward, the procedure, to one, have it, and then two, remove it?
Yeah, so I mean, to put it in, it went as part of the general surgery. And it's one of the things you think that's going to spook you, having a tube coming out your stomach. But within a day, you actually just get used to it. And it's just like, I was going to say brushing your hair, but not in my case. But just like cleaning your teeth, looking after it and using it. To get it out, you go in and it's done under a general anaesthetic, but you're in and out in a day. There's a camera goes down your throat, so your throat feels a bit sore afterwards, but that's about it, and just a plaster over it whilst it heals.
You mentioned the diet and the weight. That sounds like that improved quite rapidly for you.
Yeah.
Were there any restrictions on what you could eat or how much you could eat?
No, so initially whilst I was at home, and it was purely just the forceps through the peg and a supplement. Once I could start to eat, it was very much eat what you can. So I started with a soft diet, but it was more a case of, overcooking the vegetables, overcooking most stuff, just like that. It's soft and easy to manage. And then you gradually learn what you can cope with. And the first thing I discovered I couldn't eat was, I think it was the following, so it was the August, about the March, April time, we went to Rome. That was the first time we went to Rome. And it was a hot day, and we bought an ice cream outside the Colosseum in a cone. And I went like that and realised that my tongue wouldn't stretch that far to lick it. And of course, it all started running down. But everything else you can eat. You just have to sort of cut up small and just manage your food better, I think.
Were there any other restrictions on your function, lifestyle, what you normally wanted to do? I mean, you talked about that initial recovery period, starting to do those activities again. There was going back to work a few months later. By the time a few months had passed, that 3 months, you were on that graded phase return to work.
Yeah.
How much was life getting back to normal for you?
I mean, to be fair, it was pretty much back to normal at that stage. You're back into a routine of going to work. You get tired. I was going to bed far earlier than you normally would, and a lack of energy, but you can feel it getting progressively more and more. So very quickly back into, and for me, work's really important. So actually, if everything's right with work and everything's right with home, then I'm okay.
Did the fact that you had cancer change your view on work or your home life or work-life balance?
To be honest, it hasn't, because for me it was about getting back to how things were. Some of your priorities in life might change, and you often think, I'll save for a rainy day and we'll do that some other time, and you actually think, no, this is the rainy day and we'll do things now. So, and I've been lucky that I could get back to work and in a secure job where we can do the things that we've really wanted to do, that perhaps before we'd have put off and said, oh, perhaps we'll do them when we retire. But actually, let's do them now and enjoy life.
Who was a support for you whilst this was going on?
Chiefly, my wife, Catherine. You don't realise how much they do for you until afterwards. And so, without her, I wouldn't have got to the state I'm in today. My daughter, my parents, my sister, my in-laws, they were all there around me. The team at the hospital, so you had the people on the ward on Kinmouth who you know, the 3 weeks there you build such an attachment for. It's actually quite a wrench to leave them.
Definitely.
But I was going to clinic originally every 2 weeks and then every month. And actually you get to see the same people. So I got to see the dietitian there, I got to see the Macmillan nurse there, I got to see the speech and language therapist, and just that environment and the nurses there and the doctors. So, you know, tremendous support.
Can you remember any particular piece of advice that you thought were really valuable? Maybe things that weren't necessarily straightforward medical advice, things that really encourage you to make, you know, push forward and make an improvement. There was, I think one of the doctors, I can't remember his name, but he was actually, so what he was saying after the operations was, it's actually now down to you, you know, so they can do the clinical bits, but actually it's about you having a mindset that says you're going to do this. They can't give you an injection or a tablet that makes that happen. Actually, you've got to want to do it up there. And so for me, it was the same willpower about giving up smoking. You know. And it sounds to me like you're somebody with quite a lot of willpower. So did you use that to effect, in the sense that you took that advice on board and push yourself? Yes, and you know, if you talk to Catherine now, she'll say you're doing too much. Okay. And I think there is a bit of that's true, because you get back to work. And again, I was lucky. I had a manager who sort of, you know, brought me back quite gently. And then I moved to another manager who then pushed and, you know, got me into a more senior role. And there's that bit inside, you feel you've got something to prove, that I'm as strong as I was ever before and can still sort of work as hard. And I think that's the learning, that it's actually okay to ease off a bit. You know, don't push yourself too hard. And I'm at that stage now where I realise, actually, I need to just take stock. So has anything changed in your life, would you say, from that person you were before the diagnosis to how you are now, 5 years after the cancer? What's changed? I don't know. I want to give a bit back now. So I guess before you've had something like this, life's all about take, and you look after your own and your family. But through the head and neck support group, so I look at people who come along there, and I'm one of the really lucky ones. So, you know, I can give a bit back to people, and, you know, telling my story here is about saying, actually, the doctors did an okay job, and you can get back, and, you know, life continues. On that note, do you have any advice for other people who are facing something similar to you, but at a much earlier stage? Maybe they're just finding a symptom that they're worried about. Maybe they've just gone to see their doctor and they suspect a cancer. What would you say to them? So the obvious thing is, don't go on the internet and look it up, because you will find 101 diagnoses of what it is. So you've just actually got to trust the process that will come out and tell you. You're going to worry, so there's no way around that. So you've actually just got to live with that, and that's the hardest bit, from where you worry that you've got it to actually getting the diagnosis. After that, trust the professionals. You know, don't. So the doctor tells you something, actually they're telling you that because that's the case. You can go home and look it up on the internet and get another view, but actually that's not the doctor that's just seen you in a clinic. So, you know, trust the professionals to do it, and that's, you know, the doctors, the nurses, the dietitians, the language therapists, everyone, you know, they have got your interests at heart. And sometimes when things don't go right, you instinctively look to blame. You know, so I remember lying there thinking, you know, why has the flat failed? Who's done something wrong? But actually, that's not going to help you. So just as they didn't sort of say to me, actually, it's your own fault because you smoke, you know, things happen, but just go with it. That sounds like good advice. How much should people reach out and ask for help if they're struggling with an early symptom?
if you've got a fear, it's easier to talk to someone who's actually been through that. So don't sit there and not make the effort. People sometimes think about going to groups, and I was probably there before I had this. You never feel that comfortable, and we've all seen the TV images of sort of group therapy and that. But actually, it's a real value. Just listening to people. You don't have to say anything, but you can sort of take away whatever you want from the group. So yeah, I'd always sort of say, you know, if there's a group or an individual you can go to, then take up the option.
You, of course, engaged with the group which was about head and neck cancer support. Did you also meet people who were going through the cancer journey on the wards and who had been through a similar procedure, one-to-one?
Yeah, I mean, so the day room is where you sort of do the interaction on the sort of high dependency. The problem I had was for a long time I couldn't speak. So it was only latterly that you actually started to create those networks with people. And it is that bit that, so I remember a lady coming in who was having reconstruction surgery after breast cancer, and talking to her, it actually made my surgery pale into insignificance. And I thought, you know, why am I anxious about that when this is what she's going through? So just actually going, you know, chatting to people who are going through a similar process makes all the difference.
So there's a lot of benefit to be had from talking to other people.
Yeah.
You also, as I say, went to this support group. What would you say the key benefits of the support group were?
So for me, I'm still finding out things. So things that puzzled me about when I was ill, why did that happen? Why did I feel like that? I'm still getting answers, which to me is really useful. And people talk about things that happen to them, and it jogs your memory, not in a negative way, but I look back at the time and there were some really positive things, and there was almost a feeling of being a child again, because you move from the worry and you go through the surgery and you're at home, and then actually you've not got a care in the world, and that's a lovely place to be. And to actually talk to people who've gone through that same experience and say it's actually okay to feel like that at the time. So it's of real value.
Can you remember any particular piece of advice or inspiration that you've got from other people?
I think the bit is that it continually gets better. So you go along, you've still got numbness or restricted movement or no feeling, and you think it's going to be like that forever. And although people will say, well, you know, it may return in time, you actually don't believe them. But when you go to people who are, you know, there's one guy at the group who's 10 years on, and he's still getting feeling back. And I think that's the bit that you think, yeah, it's worth sticking with.
Definitely. What can you see in the future for yourself now? Where do things stand, and how do you see things going from here on in?
I think the next milestone for me is, because I've just got to 5 years, is an option to be discharged. So I know that there's always, you can stay on the books and come back once a year, but in my head it's about moving on from this bit. So there's the comfort blanket of going back regularly to the clinic and seeing people, even if it's just once a year. But I think because there's a support group in place, I can actually make that leap and hopefully get discharged, recognising the fact that, you know, I still see a dentist on a regular basis, so if there's anything untoward, it's likely to be picked up there. So I think that's, for me, is the next milestone of actually getting myself discharged.
How do you think you're going to feel about that?
It's going to be really mixed, because, you know, for 5 years, I've almost had my own seat in the maxillofacial clinic, and you see the people, and there's that bit about thinking, I'm not going to see those people again. But actually for them, that's a good news story. So it's about, like, you know, changing job or moving to a different location. You know, it's going to hurt, but you've got to move on.
How do you reflect now on the whole thing that you've been through? Do you think you've been lucky in some regards or unlucky, you know, given that you wouldn't, you know, this cancer came out of the blue in a sense?
I just think I've been amazingly lucky all the way through. That, you know, right from the start of it being caught early, having a work colleague going through the same thing, family, my wife around me to support me. As I was convalescing, my sister, who's 3 years older than me, she had to have a gallbladder out, so she was off work. So myself and my sister went out for days together, which normally at this time in her life, you don't get time to spend with your sister. And because it was a gallbladder she'd had out, she couldn't eat either. So, you know, we could go out and not be worrying about where we were going to go to eat. I've been really lucky with work, with the managers I had and the managers I've got now. Yeah, it's just good luck all the way through, I think.
Wow, it's incredible to hear you describe the whole thing in those terms, because I think just that description will give a lot of people encouragement who are watching this. You know, people who feel a little bit stuck, or they're scared of a complication or some further surgery or something they're facing, to see you say you've been lucky and you've had these advantages in a sense. You know, a lot of those are tremendously inspiring to other people. So I want to thank you for coming in and sharing your story. I personally found it really valuable, and I want to wish you all the best for the future. So thanks again.
Thanks for listening. Cheers.